think, as everybody's noticed, that I do keep snakes in the tropics in a fairly simple setup with no heated tubs, no thermostats, no heat mats, no additional heat. I simply work with the tropical environment that we're given. So I'd like to talk a little bit today about some of the ways that that changes the way that we look after our snakes, that changes the way that we look after our environmental parameters, and some of the ways that we can adjust things or use nature to keep the snakes comfortable in the parameters that they need. So I'm just standing here today. I've just had to clean one of the tubs. My pied female here, who is rapidly approaching size for breeding. She's up to 1500 grams now. Low white pied and also very dark, but very pretty snake. Pieds are one of my favourites. I do have some pied projects on the go at the moment. So let's take a look around the snake room at some of the things that we need to do to keep the snakes comfortable. Guys, it's a hot one here in the snake room this morning. It's raining outside, 30.5 centigrade, which is about 88-89 Fahrenheit, and very high humidity, 74% relative humidity. All of these readings are relative measurements, relative to the maximum amount of water vapor that the air can hold, and that of course is directly proportional to temperature. So 30.5 centigrade and 75% relative humidity is a tremendous amount of water vapor in the atmosphere, and I can demonstrate that with this glass of cold water sitting here on the table. It's been sitting there a few minutes and you can see the tremendous amount of condensation on the side of the glass, and water is actually starting to run off and pool onto the table. So humidity extremely high here in the tropics. So the room is not temperature controlled, no humidity controls in here. This is just what I have to deal with in the tropics. You can see now that I've turned the air conditioning on just to take the edge off the temperature for the snakes. It's got a little bit warm. The first animals to let me know that they're a little bit warm are the reticulated pythons. They tend to get a little bit unsettled if it gets too warm and they start to pace the cage, so I always know when the temperature gets too warm in here. Very rare that we have to use the air conditioning, but when we do, it's important just to knock the temperature down by a couple of degrees. As soon as I do that, the retics curl up, perfectly happy, and go back to sleep. Later in the day, it will get probably up to about 36 degrees outside. Very, very warm, but it will stay around 30 degrees here in the snake room. So in the tropics, when snakes thermoregulate, that means that they're hiding. They're trying to get out of the sun and stay cool. They don't need to bask in the tropics at 30 degrees. They're fired up and good to go first thing in the morning. They don't need to sit in the sun to absorb sunlight and warm up. It's always warm enough here in the tropics. So I'm already doing half the job for the snakes by keeping them in a room which is a lot cooler than outside. The building itself acts as a buffer for temperatures, so snakes would naturally seek shade. So I'm already doing half the job. But something quite interesting in terms of the cage, there's no heating at all in these cages. Let's have a look at this cage here. You'll see that there is a fan, an extractor fan on the back of the cage, and there are inlet vents here and also at the far end of the cage. So Khan here, my boa constrictor, I'll just quickly heat gun him, and he's at 88 Fahrenheit, so that's about room temperature, which is what you'd expect. He's quite comfortable under those conditions. But I have a ceramic water bowl in the cage, and if I just quickly heat gun that, you you can see the outside of the bowl is cooler than the ambient temperature. And if I heat gun the water inside the bowl, that's significantly cooler. So in order to thermal regulate, if the snakes need to get a little bit cooler, you will see them bowl wrap, because the bowl is actually quite a bit cooler than the ambient temperature in the cage. And you can see Annie in her cage there is doing exactly that. She's wrapped up around her bowl just to get a few degrees cooler than she otherwise would be able to. So the snakes can still thermal regulate even inside these non-heated cages. So I hope you found that interesting, guys. Living here in the tropics, it's taught me an awful lot about the relationship of temperature and humidity. I see a lot of people have problems with humidity, and they always complain that their parameters are correct, but they're still having stuck shed issues. So it's always worth remembering that temperature and humidity are directly related to each other. The colder the air is outside, the less humid it's going to be. Even though your relative humidities may still be 60%, the total amount of humidity in the atmosphere is less. So for instance, if you're living in a temperate climate and it's cold outside, your snake room is heated. So that's going to reduce the humidity from what it is outside. And then in your snake tubs, if you heat those as well, that is again going to reduce the humidity. So remember, in any environment where you're adding heat, you are actually increasing the potential of the air to carry more humidity, but you must add the humidity yourself. If you don't do that, if you just warm the place up, you will end up with a fairly dry atmosphere and potential stuck shed problems, even though your relative humidity could still be quite high. Remember that the outside environment is sucking that humidity out of your snake room, rather than the humidity that we have here in the tropics, pushing a little bit too much humidity sometimes into the snake room. So thanks for watching, guys. This is my banana enchi spider, the guy that proved out to have pastel in him as well. We're breeding him again this year, so we're hoping to get some nice babies from him. Hope you found it interesting. Hope you like the snakes. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.